We have been reading Celebrating Biblical Feasts. It walks us through how the Jews celebrate these holidays. But the question is that really relevant to us? And is that something that we should be striving to emulate? In the New Testament, Paul was very quick to tell believers, don't pick up Jewish law, but remember, we are under grace. This is God's appointed times. And what we're going to learn in here is, what are the holidays? How do the Jews celebrate it? And how can we celebrate it as New Testament believers if we're looking to learn more and discover more about God's appointed feasts? And if we haven't met before, hi, my name's Erica Lynn, and I'm a homeschooling mom of 4, and I want to be your homeschooling bestie. It is my hope to help make homeschooling easy for everyday moms and dads. A search for Jewish roots. Something unusual is stirring among believers in Yeshua, Jesus, in our day. You must have noticed, since you are interested in a book like this, throughout church history, there has been a chasm of misunderstanding between the church, which is the body of Messiah, and the Jewish people. Both Christians and Jews have falsely concluded that there is little real or practical connection between Christianity and Jewish life. However, these views are based on either ignorance or false presuppositions. As one objectively studies the New Testament, one finds there is no escaping the inherent Jewishness of faith in Yeshua, the Messiah. Jesus himself was a traditional Jew living in the land of Israel. He called other Jews to follow him as Messiah, the anointed one from God. His early followers considered themselves to be Jews who had found the promised Messiah. Hence, they naturally continued the Jewish expression of their faith. It is, I believe, a tragedy that the Christian community has not understood, for the most part, the rich heritage on which its faith is built. Many believers, however, rediscovering these connections, are wondering just how they can understand the Jewishness of their faith in a practical way. The biblical holy days are a pragmatic way. These feasts were revealed by God for his own particular reasons, and through them, all believers can be blessed, Jews and Gentiles. The purpose of the biblical holidays. The feasts of the Lord, or the biblical holy days, teach us about the nature of God and his plan for mankind. A classic passage in regard to the holy days is found in the New Testament. So don't let anyone pass judgment on you in connection with eating and drinking, or in regard to a Jewish festival, or Rosh Hashanah, or Shabbat. These are a shadow of things that are coming, but the body is of the Messiah. Colossians 2:16-17. While this passage is often taken to mean avoid legalism, there is another truth stated. It is true that the festivals are not the ultimate goals of faith, yet they do hold tremendous lessons for God's children. The festivals are not antiquated tangents to faith, but on the positive side, they are in fact legitimate shadows or models of God's truth. This is something that should be explored in a positive way, not shunned as legalism. For example, the Sabbath has much to teach about our weekly lives. Passover is rich in the symbolism of the Messiah's death, burial, and resurrection. Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur are not obsolete, but continue to declare the reality of Yeshua's return to this earth. In short, all of the feasts of the Lord were given to Israel and to grafted-in believers to teach, in a practical way, more about God and his plan for the world. When analyzed with the right spirit, there are some exciting new truths waiting to be rediscovered through participation in the Jewish biblical holy days. Now, I'm going to highlight that section yellow because the truth is that is the heart and the main point behind why a New Testament believer might want to learn more about God's holy days. Because there are lessons in here. There are good things to be learned about God's character and his timeline of the world. The continuity of the biblical holy days. Some believers understand, at least in a theoretical way, that the feasts provide excellent teaching for believers. Yet because of certain popular theological positions, these believers question the value of continuing the celebrations today. Their contention is that these holy days are no longer relevant because Jesus fulfilled all of their symbolism in his earthly life and ministry. While there is a fulfillment to the holy days, there is also a continuation of the practical expression of these feasts. Yeshua himself observed the various feasts during his earthly life. The gospel writers tell us that his custom was to worship on the Sabbath. In Luke 4:16. It was during the Feast of Tabernacles that Yeshua offered living water to the Jewish multitude. John 7:37-39. One of his most powerful sermons, in which he proclaimed his messiahship, took place in the temple at Hanukkah. John 10:22-30. The earthly life and ministry of Messiah shows the continuity of the biblical holy days. This continuity did not suddenly cease with the apostolic generation that followed, although there are several statements in the New Testament that cause us to think carefully about a proper balance concerning the holy days. There is clear indication that the early followers of Yeshua continued the practices. It was at Shavuot, or Pentecost, that the first believers gathered for prayer to proclaim the risen Messiah. Acts 2. In his discussion about the spiritual significance of Passover, Paul exhorts the Corinthian believers, which was a mixed group of Jews and Gentiles, to celebrate the Seder, Corinthians 5:8, with right understanding. There is an abundant evidence that the disciples understood and continued to celebrate the wonderful truth of God through the holy days delineated in the scriptures. This is an example for believers today. Much can be gained by continuing to observe the holy days in the present generation. The freedom of the biblical holy days. A final note needs to be made that as we consider the celebration of the biblical feasts by believers, hopefully you are excited about the positive reasons to understand and incorporate the holy days into your life. Of utmost importance is the emphasis upon our freedom in the Messiah. These days, as with any other biblical custom, are not meant to lead us into legalistic bondage. Messiah, Yeshua, is our total sufficiency when it comes to our spiritual standing before God. Galatians 5:1. To summarize that section, we want to be very clear. What he is saying is that we do not celebrate the biblical feast because we are under the law and we have any obligation. Celebrating the biblical feast has no bearing on our salvation at all. We do it out of a love for God. It does not gain us any place, position, or preference in God's courtroom. So it is simply an act of worship to our Savior. It is not required in any way. Yet, there are some compelling reasons to celebrate the feast. I hope you will discover, as many believers have, that a balanced celebration of the feast is a wonderful blessing. The biblical feasts teach much about who God is and his exciting plan for life. It is my prayer that this positive blessing will be yours as you better understand and celebrate God's appointed times. Barney Cashton. Okay, I'm excited for this. If you have not listened to the introduction chapter to Celebrating Biblical Feasts over here, I highly recommend you pop over to this video and listen to the introduction there. I think these books complement each other in understanding what Jews are doing and what some New Testament believers can do, and then bringing a more practical approach here.